Hello and welcome to today's lesson. As you are watching, please make sure that you are taking notes because once again, you will be asked to show your notes to the teacher in order to receive your homework assignment. So like I said, make sure you are taking notes. Today, our objective, this is lesson 5-4 for those of you who like to write that down. And our objective for today is that you all, the mathematicians, will be able to write and graph a linear equation using point-slope form. So in the past we have looked at slope-intercept form, so this is a new format that we do not typically teach in pre-algebra, so it may be completely new to some of you. So let's get started. One piece that we need to have at the front of our minds here as we begin today is that you can use the slope of a line at any point on the line to write and graph the equation. And so we are going to be using those two essential pieces to write our equations today as well. It's also important to note that any two equations for the same line are equivalent. So even if one person writes slope-intercept and one person writes point-slope, they are equivalent equations. All right, so let's take a look here. Point-slope form, what is it? The point-slope form of an equation of a non-vertical line with a slope of m and through the point x1, y1 is y minus y1 equals m parentheses x minus x1. So as you'll notice, we've got a y and a y1, we've got an x and an x1, and then we've also got an m in there. Well, m stands for slope, and that should be something that hopefully is familiar to you and continues to be something that's at the front of your minds. M will always be slope in these equations. But then we've got y's and x's. The x and the y without the small number below them are the x and the y from your equation. So those will be in your answer. And then the x1 and the y1 are the x and y coordinates from the ordered pair that you use to write the point slope form of the equation. So let's take a look at what that looks like so that we can make more sense of what you see and what I just said. Okay? The reason that this works, if you take a look at how you find slope, y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1, and you take a look at simplifying that equation, if you are trying to simplify, one of the first things we do is get rid of the fraction. So in that third step there, it shows multiplying by the denominator, by the x minus x, and you end up then with your point slope form equation. So the y minus y1 equals m times x minus x1. So that's just kind of a why it works if that's something that you helps you remember this. So like I said, let's take a look at how this works. A line passes through negative 3, 6 and has a slope of negative 5. What is an equation of the line? Now, I know that in an ordered pair, the first value is x and the second value is y. So I'm going to keep that in my mind. And here's my slope right here. Well, I know that slope is going to go in for m. So y minus y1 equals negative 5 times x minus x1. Well, what else can I replace here? Because that does not look like it is finished to me. Well, I can replace my x and y coordinates here. So I'm going to erase this x1 over here on the right and look at the x value from my ordered pair, and it is negative 3. And then I'm going to take a look at my y1, which is my y value of 6, and I'm going to plug those values in then to get my point slope form. In this equation, the only thing that can be simplified here is my two negatives over here make a positive. So I end up with y minus 6 equals negative 5 times the quantity of x plus 3. Okay? So as you'll notice, all I needed to do there was plug in that slope and then take the x and the y with the subscript of 1 and plug in my ordered pair. Okay? If you would please pause your video and give this one a try by yourself, and when you are ready to check your answer, please resume your video to check your answer. Alright, welcome back. Here is your answer. your answer should be y plus 4 equals 2/3 times the quantity of x minus 8. You will notice that the subtraction that is typically at the front of the equation did change to adding because of the negative. The negative and the subtraction cancel each other out there to make a plus. So how do we take this then and graph it? Well, as I look at this, okay, the graph of the equation y minus 1 equals 2/3 x minus 2. Well, I know that because of the format, kind of the template for my equation here, that 2/3 is my slope. And then I believe that I can, from this equation, come up with one ordered pair to start with. I can do that because the y1 and the x1 are an ordered pair that I can use to create this equation, so I can just the same pull them out of the equation. It would be the 2 and the 1. Well, I know that my x value is the one at the end by the other x, so my x value is 2, and my y value is 1. So now what I can do is on my graph, I can come to the point 2, 1, and start with a point there, and then my slope, my rise over run, rise 2 and run 3. 1, 2, 3, and plot my point. From there, I'm going to do the best I can. It's not going to be perfect, but I could draw a decently straight line there to have the graph of this equation. Okay, so once again, I'm just kind of working backwards, pulling the slope out, and then pulling the x1 and y1 back out of the equation to get the ordered pair to start with, using the slope to draw another point. So go ahead and take a look at this one here. When you think you have a graph that is accurate, please resume your video and check your answer. Alright, welcome back. Here is a graph to check your answer. For this one, your slope was -4/5, so that right away should have told you that you had a negative line, or a line that's going down. Our x value is 4, and our y value was -7, and so 4 down to the -7 there was here, and then rise 4 and run 5 going in a negative direction. You will notice that I had a -7 here. Watch the sign. It is supposed to be subtraction, so when I see adding, that tells me that it was a negative sign and those two canceled each other out. Alright, so let's continue on here. So what happens then when I am given 2 points and I am asked to write an equation? Well, I know that when I have 2 ordered pairs, I can calculate the slope using this formula. So I'm going to go ahead and start there. This is x, y, and again, doesn't matter which one's 1 and 2, it's just important for consistency's purposes. So I've got 4 minus -3 over 1 minus -2. And it turns into 7 over 3. So my slope in this particular situation is 7 over 3. Once I've calculated that, I can come back to my point slope form equation, put my slope in, and pick an ordered pair as well to plug in there. So I've got y minus y1, -3, equals my slope 7/3 times x minus -2. Now, as I look at that, I do have 2 negatives here, so that cancels to a positive. These 2 negatives cancel to a positive, so one of the equations that I could come up with is y plus 3 equals 7/3 x plus 2. Now, it is also possible to use the other ordered pair, so if that was what came to your mind, that is perfectly fine here. It would have been y minus 4 is equal to 7/3 x minus 1. And because those are 2 equations for the same line, those are equivalent equations. Alright, so here is a got it question for you. When you are done with this question, please resume your video to check your answers and ask if you have questions. All right, welcome back. Hopefully you've got something down here. Take a look at the answer for this one. I do have both options because you could choose either ordered pair. So we've got y minus 1 equals 1/2 x plus 2, or y minus 4 equals 1/2 x minus 4. Either one of those are perfectly fine, or if you happen to write both down, that is okay too. In my real world situation here, using a table to get the information that I need to write my equation in point slope form. As I look here, my table is showing the altitude of a hot air balloon during its linear descent. Tells me it's linear, tells me it's constant right there. What equation in slope-intercept form gives the balloon's altitude at any time? I see that in this equation, they are asking me for slope-intercept form, which is different than what we have been doing previously in the lesson. I do have the point slope form on the PowerPoint slide, and hopefully you will see why here in just a moment. So, as we take a look at this, I need to first start off by finding the slope. If I don't do that, I'm not going to be able to even start with my problem here. So, I'm going to find my slope here. 590 to 640. Subtract to get 50, or going down 50. And over here I am going up 20, which means my slope is -5/2. I'm going to erase some of that because I believe that I will run out of space here. So knowing that my slope is -5/2, how can I continue? Well, I can go ahead and pick an ordered pair, and I'm just going to pick the first one just because that makes it easy, and I'm going to go ahead and substitute in here y minus my y number 1, which is 640, equals -5/2 times x minus my x number 1, which is 10. So as I work here, I need to get it to slope-intercept form. So my goal at the end of the day here is to isolate that y and see if I have my slope-intercept form back here. So I'm actually going to start by distributing this fraction. Y minus 640 equals -5/2x, and then 5/2 times 10. They are both negative, so it is going to turn into a positive. And it simplifies to plus 25. Then I can take a look here and add 640 to get that y by itself. To get y equals -5/2x, and then 640 plus 25 is 665, and this does look like my slope-intercept form from my previous days and previous years working with this, so I do believe here that I am good to go. The second part of my question does ask me, what do the slope, sorry for the typo, slope and y-intercept represent? The slope represents how far it is descending each second, so 5/2 or 2.5 meters here per second. And then the 665 represents the altitude that we started at. So when we started measuring and started looking at the descent, or it coming back down, it was at 665, and then as it comes down here, we have a chart to represent the rest. Okay. All right, so let's take a look. Once again, you've got a Got It question here, so please take a look at this Got It question, give it a try, and when you are ready, resume the video to check your answer. All right, welcome back. Hopefully you've got some things down and this is making quite a bit of sense here. We've got our answers here. The table shows a number of gallons of water Y in a tank after X hours. The relationship is linear. Write the point slope form first, and it does ask what the slope represents. The point slope form using the first point in your data table, Y minus 3,320 equals 1,250 X minus 2. You could have used different points and your equation could look a little bit different there, but I chose to use the first one, so that is what mine looked like. The slope in this particular situation represents the rate at which the water is being added to the tank in gallons per hour. In part B, it asks me to take the point slope form and write it in slope intercept form, and so when you do that, you should get Y equals 1,250X plus 820. And the y-intercept, the 820, represents the initial number of gallons of water in that tank. All right, so at this time, you should have your notes completed. And hopefully this point slope form is making some sense. If you have questions along the way, please make sure you are asking them, either in class or over email if you have them.